the one life we're given. When my father was dying, I was alone with him in the hospital and found myself feeding him applesauce. The moment opened and my whole being, my whole life was suddenly concentrating on slipping the spoon with the utmost care into his mouth, waiting for him to swallow, and then sliding the spoon slowly from his lips, so as not to disturb his labored breathing. We repeated this ritual tenderly, spoonful after spoonful. And in the rare quiet of a January afternoon, wonder began to fill the room. I began to cry softly. There seemed to be a glow about us. There was no need for words. I didn't want my life to leave this moment of feeding my father. Through my thoroughness of care, I'd found a transparent instant in the middle of all our trouble, in the middle of his dying, and in this moment of tenderness, all of life opened. We had fallen into the center, which felt like the dot of clarity cleared in a lake by one drop of rain from which the water ripples in every direction. My father and I were in that still dot of clearness. My sadness had given way to care, which had given way to wonder and the center of all that pain. As I slipped the spoon from his mouth one last time, I felt that I was in the moment of every child who ever fed their dying parent. I kissed his forehead and held his hand, both of us more alive than we could remember, completely covered in inexplicable wonder. Wonder helps each soul awaken and discover where its foundation touches the foundation of all things. Wonder doesn't just appear as a function of peace or joy or things draped in light. Wonder is a matter of depth, not mood. That day with my father, I learned that a presence waits beneath our chatter and our pain that can illuminate the world. When tired, we splash water on our face. If you find me half-hearted, please splash some wonder on my face.
Before I share our second reading, I want to tell you a few things about the poet, Nikki Giovanni, just in case you don't know Nikki. Nikki died just last December at age 81. She was a charismatic, an amazingly vivacious and world-renowned poet. She was an activist, a professor, and a public intellectual, one of the foremost authors of the Black arts movement of the 1960s. Nikki wrote and spoke about race, gender, sex, politics, and love. I listened to an interview with her where she brought the lushness of eating with such vivaciousness that was almost like sex, which she lifted up as almost like sex. Actually, I think she thought that food was better than sex. Nikki personified joy as an act of resistance. Here's her poem, one of her poems that she wrote in 2020, Biography. There is a bat in Chile named Microniterus giovanniae. Dr. Robert Baker named it after me. He discovered it while studying bats and thought the big ears were just like me. Maybe if the bat wrote, she would be a poet. There is a plaque in Lincoln Heights where I went to school and a plaque in Knoxville across the street where my grandparents lived. I'm also lucky to have awards and daydreams, or is that daydreams and awards? And I'm lucky to be happy at what I do and how I do it. So that is this, bio. I'm here. And if I missed on emotional soil, a weed will grow. Make me rain. Let this be a part of this needed change. We all have a biography. I probably can't write mine nearly as poetic as Nikki. Maybe you can't either. But we all have these bios these markers of our personhood, our authenticity, how our love and kindness and compassion have guided us. The days of our lives hold stories. A bat in Chile might not be named after you, but perhaps a grandchild is. When you look in the mirror, do you see parts knowing that you share them with others? When I was a teenager, I worked at the McDonald's down in West Duluth. I lived about a half an hour away. There weren't many choices of employment, and so I worked at the McDonald's a half an hour away in West Duluth. And when I worked at the counter, a surprising number of times, someone would say to me, you look just like so-and-so. Do you know them? Are you related to them? Are you sure you don't know this person? I'm an adoptee. And so I would wonder and wonder and wonder. I don't know. Could be. What about my big blue eyes? What about the elf ear that I have? Not big ears like Nikki, but I have an elf ear on my left ear, this little extra bit of cartilage that makes a little pointiness at the top of my ear. Are those that stood out? What prompted those questions? I wondered so hard as a 16 and 17-year-old working at McDonald's. Who do I have to be grateful for that which came out of cells, which split and multiplied until 50 trillion individual cells laid out a trajectory of who I am as a living organism? A few points of my biography, of your biography, parts of what make up who we are. And in this vein of bios, I've been exploring from some time about what it means to be an activist theologian. I know, big words. I'm going to go down big words for just a moment. This activist theologian is a term that comes from Robert Henderson Espinoza, a scholar and a non-binary trans queer Latinx. The reason I'm attracted to this part of identity, this part of one's biography, the tiniest little bit that I share with the illuminary Nikki Giovanni, tiny little bit, is that an activist theology helps us know how we act and why we act. It bridges the theoretical with the practical, a grounding our why, our because, our ideas, our vision with what is manifested, how we are a part of bringing needed change. This theology becomes active by ways of affirming, dismantling, storytelling, restoring, healing, breathing, and reorienting. It works at tearing down, but also simultaneously at building up. What in our lives have we torn down? Have we dismantled? Have we let go of? And how have we remade ourselves? Little ways and big ways. We are all in that regenerative stage throughout our entire lives. Who we are now is not who we were at 16, who we were at 25, who we were at 40, and so on and so forth. So it's so curious to me why and how we are who we are, that biography that we now carry with us. And Robin wrote what they called a confession of an aspiring activist theologian. And a confession. It's more like a proclamation, I think. It's one of those litanies that has all of these because statements. Because of this, 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 I am. And so intrigued by this form of poetry, a slightly more accessible form of poetry for me, I decided to write my own confession of an aspiring activist theologian. It might not quite connect to your lives, but think about your own becauses as you were to go through the history and pathways of your life. What might your confession or proclamation of an aspiring, beautiful human being be? A theologian, a thinker, a person of faith, a person of compassion, a person who is trying to make change in the world. So here's what I have so far, inspired by Robin's own confession. Because I am born of a mother not known to me, because my people are both those I was adopted into and those revealed to me by DNA, because my white family lived in a small, insular, largely white, lower to middle class community, because I grew up learning the ways of Jesus in a small country church, because my younger sister acted in harmful ways that led me to flee my home in the Twin Ports for the Twin Cities, because I took a class in college called Women and the Bible and discovered feminism and left Christianity, because I married the cis straight man who I fell in love with at age 20 and when I didn't yet know my own queerness, because I worked mostly in systems of capitalism for nearly 20 years, because I found my roots in Unitarian Universalism on the outgoing edge of young adulthood, because I discovered a calling to ministry at midlife, because I came out and still love and am loved by my straight spouse of 30 years, because a white lesbian and national leader within our faith tradition started my formal education into activism, and because Indigenous, Black, and Brown people, trans folks, women from UU, Christian, Jewish, humanist traditions, and secular spaces continue to teach me, continue to midwife me, because I am invested in the collective liberation of all people, because none of us are free until all of us are free, because of all I have just named and all that is still emerging, I am part of the resistance too. I am an organizer and a faith leader called forth by revolutionary love as a weaver, a guide, a storyteller, to practice and act and be part of this needed change. With gratitude for impermanence and presence, this is one account of my life journey, my aspirations, my biography. It's a little challenging to look back at your life story and try to pull out those markers, those meaningful markers, to have gratitude for what they are, to name them and claim them, even though embedded in every single one of those because statements is a depth of story and transformation that is hard sometimes for me to look at, is complicated, complex. We are people of multitudes, aren't we? This morning, we have heard a collage of biographies, snippets of beloveds that we hold and carry with us, people who have meant so much to us, some freshly gone with grief still raw and tender, some that we remember at odd moments, others that today or this year or this month represent a significant milestone where they all of a sudden bubble up again in the forefront of our heart. We get glimpses into lives just starting, still going, and those that remain only in our memories and our artifacts when we share these stories with each other, when we can find the moments where we can express gratitude for the lives that we have lived and the gratitude for the lives that we encounter. All of these stories connect points of abundance of what's been given and received within the web of mutuality that holds us all. Sharing these stories, remembering and naming who and whose we are, is a practice of gratitude, and we give thanks for all that we have been given. Some of it came from lucky breaks, or good fortune, or privilege, or hard work, or random chance. From the minute to the grand, our lifetimes offer hundreds, thousands, countless things that we can be grateful for. This is what grateful living is, writes Christy Nelson. Returning to the noticing of all that is sufficient, of all that is extraordinary, all that already is in our lives, enough to take our breaths away, and using that to help us get through life in a way, through difficulty, through challenge, uplifted and enamored. In the circle of giving and receiving, there is no hoarding, no gatekeeping, no keeping a tally. We are being accountable to each other. We are living into the responsibility that we have for each other and for our own stories. For our own stories, we can honor and uplift even the things that we wish were never there. We are extending our gratitude into generosity. Generosity of our time, generosity of the gifts we can share, and generosity with the thoughts and care that we have for one another and for ourselves. Every Sunday when we gather, in your order of service and on the e-news that Jean sets out, there is a list of the shared values that are the core expressions of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. JET-PIG is the handy acronym that I like to use. So many of us like to use. Justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity, all centered and grounded by love. And you might have noticed the G word is not gratitude, not the theme that we are nurturing this month, but generosity. And there was a bit of a heated debate when these values were coming into being on what should it be, gratitude or generosity, generosity or gratitude, some making the compelling case that when we can name our gratitude, the difference that that can make in our lives. And yet ultimately, through the wise reflections and conversations that so many people had, it was lifted up that gratitude is what feeds generosity. Gratitude propels generosity. Generosity cannot happen without gratitude and hope. If we are merely grateful for what we have, explains the chair of the commission that helped bring these values into being, the Reverend Cheryl Walker. If we are merely grateful for what we have and are in turn not generous with our time, with our love for our faith, with our gratitude, then our gratitude would simply be an exercise in individualism. But if our gratitude calls us to extend our blessings into the world, That is generosity. Gratitude is not a commodity. It is not transactional. It is relational. When we feel and express gratitude, we are misting the soil, enriching the soil, creating damp loaminess that grows abundance, that grows reciprocity, that grows generosity. Acknowledging the gifts you've received creates a sense of abundance. The knowing that you already have what you need, writes Robin Wall Kimmerer. In an economy based on gratitude and reciprocity, I accept the gift of fruit from the serviceberry tree and spread it around with a dish of berries to my neighbor who makes a pie to share with his friend who feels so worthy in food and friendship that he volunteers at the food pantry. Keith shared that story with us as part of his and his community's and our community's story of gratitude and of generosity.
Karma.
So let us extend our blessings to the world. Let us cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, knowing our generosity connects us to one another in joy, in care, in love. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Blessings be. Amen.